Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Alif, and today we have with us a special guest that is a 10 times national sport champion, an international coach, and a CEO turned high-performance leadership expert. He's also an international speaker who brings with him 27 years of experience working in the sport, health, mind, education, and hospitality industries, working with CEOs, emerging leaders, and high-performing leaders across the globe. Please welcome Mr. Craig Johns.
Yeah, hi, Leif. I'm really well, thank you. Just enjoying a nice evening here in Sydney.
Thank you for joining us today, Craig, and we're delighted to have you with us. Before we begin, would you like to share how you work or how a typical day of work looks like for you?
I don't think there is a typical day. Every day is very different and very unique, which I absolutely love. Yeah. Generally, I'll get up in the morning. I like to swim or go to the gym early in the morning. I always like to make sure I get exercise in. And then I generally split my day in two because we've got teams that in 5 different countries around the world. We deliver programs across 60. So quite often I get a lot of work done in the morning, then I'll take a break. Quite often we'll go for a mountain bike ride or go hit some golf balls. And then I'll come on later in the afternoon and through in the evening when we're dealing with some of our other clients and more towards sort of Asia and into Europe. And so, yeah, that's kind of how my day goes most days. Our whole team is remote working. We have no office, and it's been like that from day one. And so, yeah, it's a really, really exciting day, and I love kind of every bit of work we do and the amazing clients we get to work with.
I see. And I reckon guest speaking takes up a huge chunk of your time in your day-to-day life. Am I correct?
Yeah, so do quite a range. So like I do some keynote speaking, but that's not really my main thing I do, but I do love doing it. I actually did one today for government and sort of corporate real estate people around how to influence C-suite and government leaders to take action. So it was a really, really exciting session. But most of the time I run a company that deals with bespoke corporate training. So we do a lot of facilitating, executive coaching. But my main role in that is actually to kind of coach the team. It's like coaching a high performance sports team, which is my background. So I absolutely love that I get to work with some really incredibly driven, disciplined, determined, and very talented people.
Yes. So, Craig, I assume you have been into sports since a very young age, right? Hearing from whatever you're saying. So it is something that has been driving you since your teenage years or your childhood, is it?
Yeah, sport's been part of my life. My dad's side of the family all played field hockey, and my dad and my granddad were really, really good field hockey coaches. My mum's side of the family were all into cricket, and my uncle, my granddad were both captains and coaches of representative teams. So we were always kind of surrounded with sport and sort of high-level sport as well. And for me, I love playing sport. I play every single sport I could possibly get my hands on. I was fortunate to make New Zealand squads in both triathlon and field hockey, so 2 very, very different sports. And then went on to win 10 national titles across 4 different sports of triathlon, duathlon, mountain biking, and road cycling. So quite diverse. And, I played rugby as well, which everyone does in New Zealand, and a number of other sports as well. But I kind of really fell in love with kind of that endurance sport while also enjoying the team sport of field hockey as well.
Yeah. So do you still compete?
So I retired from international sport back in 2009. I had a second pacemaker and a hip replacement in 2010, which kind of curtailed the sort of high-end level. I did do a bit more racing, sort of in the mountain bike cycling for a couple of years, and then since then, I play competitive golf when I can. I don't get too much time to play it, but still play at a fairly high level to keep my competitive juices away from work and kind of have a nice outlet for that as well. And when I get a chance, I still mountain bike for fun and swim for fun, just to keep fit.
That's fantastic. And I am also someone who is into sports. So I am a competitive bodybuilder, and I used to be competitively participating in football as well. we are alike in some sense in that nature. So I want to know from your point of view, Craig. So how do you think sport molds an individual's personality?
A good question. Look, it depends on the sports. So you can mold it in very, very different ways. So let's take the two examples of sports I played for. I was in New Zealand squads for. So you got triathlon, which is an individual sport. You are out there alone a lot of the time. There's a lot of training that's involved. Generally we would train anywhere between 20 and 30 hours a week, with a big week being up around 40. So a lot of time on your own, in your own head. You got to stay very, very focused. You kind of shut out a lot of things in life, so you can be very disciplined and in the way you eat. It's kind of like bodybuilding. You're very careful what you eat, and very disciplined on sleep and recovery. And the mental side of that's really unique. Like, there were some races where you'd have 1 in 4,000 chance of winning. There are 4,000 people on the start line. So the chances of winning, unless you're a real freak and real genetic superstar, the chances of winning are pretty rare. So you're used to losing a lot in a way, and you have to kind of approach it as, am I progressing? Am I getting better all the time versus am I winning or losing? Because if you go focus on winning and losing, unless you're like the best in the world, you're going to be disappointed a lot. So you've got that aspect. Then field hockey, you've got pretty much a 50% chance of winning. Yeah. And so you either win or you lose. Yes, you can draw, but a lot of the time it's mainly win or lose. And so you've got more chances to do it. And also you're in a team environment, so you're learning a lot of team skills, how to communicate with people, how to lead people, how to think about how can we win this collectively rather than on your own, which is very different to, say, triathlon. But I was very fortunate. I got to play for a team which holds the record in New Zealand for the longest streak without losing a game in any sport. And so it's better than the All Blacks in a way that it's been able to win many events, many sort of matches, etc. along the way. And so I was there right at the beginning for the first 5 years, and they went 16 years without losing. It's 272 games, which is pretty much unheard of around the world. Yes. in anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like if you look at kind of international elite sports, you had Jenga Khan, the squash player. Yeah. He went 555 games without losing. Now that was an individual sport, phenomenal achievement. But if you start looking at the NBA, you look at world championships, or even the All Blacks, for instance, most of them, the longest winning streaks are only around 20 to 24 games. There are a couple of college basketball teams that have got up to 100, 150. So very, very rare. It was an amazing team, and there were some people that were there from the beginning to the end of that era. And even since then, they've barely lost a game. And it's a small town. There's only 5,000 people there. We go up against, teams from towns that are, 100,000, 200,000 people, and we would always win. We knew how to win. So the pressures are very, very different in those kind of sports. When you're individual, the pressure where you can win or lose easily, like it's harder to win than it is to, it's hard to win, but quite easy to lose in a way. And so that mindset is very, very different to, say, when you're in a team sport and you're winning all the time. Yes. Because everyone's going to bring your A game. For those all 272 games that they won, that they didn't lose, people were bringing their best game every time, and we were having to absorb the stress and the challenge that they would bring, and then to turn and to kind of dissolve the pressure in a way, and then be able to believe in ourselves. And it's quite interesting when you talk to, say, the All Blacks, and for those who don't know who the All Blacks are, they are the winningest sports team of international sport of all time, and they are the New Zealand rugby team. They're very, very famous. They're not performing so well at the moment, but well over 100 years, they're the best performing team. Their win rate is around 86% over all time. To give you an example,
yes,
Manchester United's about 60. It's quite incredible what they have been able to achieve. But in those instances, I think for both us and our field hockey team, All Blacks are quite the same, where it wasn't always about winning. It was a lot around how can we take the game to the next level? How can we progress the sport? And we played like that in our field hockey team. And the All Blacks are very, very same in their philosophy. And sometimes you'll get it wrong. But if you focus that way, you're always a step ahead of everyone else. And that was the beauty of it.
Yes, that is completely true. And I personally believe that sports and a corporate job have very much in common. Like when you say that you are taking up a sport, right? So you need to be very disciplined. You need to be motivated. You need to put in your practice day in and day out. The same thing goes for when you're working as an employee. So you need to be motivated to come to work. You need to be disciplined at the job. And you need to make sure that you put in the best of your efforts to make sure that you thrive at your job. Now, when it comes to employees that are lacking in terms of motivation or discipline, do you think that sports can be the answer for those employees?
Yeah, look, 100%. And because, there's so much benefits from sport around the teamwork, the discipline. You've got obviously the hormone release of your dopamines and serotonin, which are kind of the happy hormones in a way. They make you feel good. There's the teamwork. There's the kind of the third space outlet from work and maybe their relationship life.
Yes.
And it's a good way, one, for your own well-being, but also to connect with other people. The beautiful thing around, and even looking at sport and how you can transfer that across, high performance, no matter whether you're an athlete, a parent, a CEO, a violinist, a top musician, a consultant, someone who works at the checkout counter, high performance is exactly the same. The basic fundamentals don't change, and they are, at the basic level, exercise daily. They are fuel your body with the right food. They are free your mind and recover with purpose. Mm-hmm. And so those components, if you apply them in any situation in life, if you get those right, you can then go to another level in regards to whatever you are doing. And so if we're looking at pure performance, then, that exercising daily. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go out and, bench press 200 kgs, or you have to run 100 meters under 11 seconds or whatever. Sometimes you need to actually just exercise gently because there are so many stresses in life. So exercise is good, but, for a lot of CEOs and high performers I deal with, and even myself at times, 30 minutes of exercise in a day might just be a walk, because you've already got all these stresses that keep adding up. And if you add another stress of going really hard out for a workout, you might tip the scale and go from being in a performing mode into a sick mode. Mm-hmm. And so, or an injured mode. Mm-hmm. So yes, exercise and sport is really important, but we've also got to think about how we implement it depending on what other stresses are happening in life. Yes. So are we doing it as an active recovery, or are we doing it to improve our body in the way that hormones are working and the way we're thinking, our mood, all that kind of stuff? Like, what is the outcome of it in regards to what other stresses we have in our lives?
Yes. And as you know, like where wellness programs, they are put in place nowadays to address the issues that you mentioned, the stress, the injuries, the workplace safety concerns, everything. So like you said, how does a leader or how does an employer incorporate sports into their wellness program?
A number of ways of doing it, I suppose. Like you can either do it as some sort of lunch thing. I see some companies do it beforehand. Some put teams into kind of like social leagues that are happening in the community. Some create gyms inside their buildings. So a number of different ways you can do it. I know that some use it as a reward recognition type thing, that if you're looking after your health, will reward you in other ways. So a number of different ways you can implement it. I think the key is, though, it's got to be role modeled from the executives. For any well-being program to be effective, or any sort of change inside an organization, if that behavior is not role modeled by the executives, by the leaders, and then filtered down, it may not be as effective as it could be in most cases.
Yes, and as you said, it is very important to model a wellness program according to an employee's needs and wants. And sports in general just has a lot to teach individuals. Similar thing, I think, can be said of leaders, right? Leaders can learn a lot from sports, can they not?
Yeah, they can, but there's ways you can lead without sport too. So it's not the non-negotiable, but it does help because it teaches you so many aspects of how we can work, and obviously, the healthier we are, the more clarity we have, the more endurance we have in the day, but also it allows you to kind of free your mind and keep that metabolism up so the body keeps working. And quite often we see people who sit in chairs, who don't do much exercise, they become very tight, so they're not flexible, and therefore then they start to create blockages in their muscles, which affect the nervous system, which affect the whole blood flow, which then affects how we can actually perform.
Yes.
And with the advent of remote working, or people working from home, as many had to over the past couple of years, we're seeing a lot of issues where people aren't disciplined enough to actually get up from their seat and actually go and exercise, actually take a break. And a lot of people are just sitting. So one, the metabolism is not working, so they're putting on weight easier. Two, the mind, like from a performance perspective, after around 45 minutes to an hour of intense work or intense brain work, we actually start to drop in performance. Now, you only need 15 to 20 minutes. It's kind of like a 3-to-1 work to recovery or rest cycle that allows you to come back up to that high performing level again. So, if you want to perform at a high level throughout the whole day, you need to have intermittent breaks throughout, which we do in sport, right? We do periodization.
Yes.
And unless and the higher the stress, the more recovery you need. So the higher the workload, the more recovery you need. But in general, and it works pretty much the same in sport as it does in from a physical perspective as it does, say, in a workplace from a mental perspective, the studies out there is pretty much a 3-to-1 work to rest ratio. And you've got to be able to apply that not only during the day, but over a week, over a month, over a year, over a whole career. Yeah. And how can you implement that type of, yes, I can have 3, say, for instance, in a month. How can I have 3 weeks where I might be traveling lots, have lots of meetings, might work a bit harder, big projects, and then 1 week of the month where I actually have no travel, reduce the number of meetings. I might leave work early to go pick up the kids from school, or I might have a couple of days off to allow that body to come back. So you can do it in a day, you can do it in a week, you can do it over 3 or 4 times a year as well. And the interesting thing about it is when you're an athlete, if you get recovery wrong, it is really easy. There's a strong trigger. I can't run as fast. My reactions are slower. I make mistakes. I feel fatigued. It is really easy to get. Now, you move into a space where you're working in a corporate life, unless there's a catastrophic event or unless you work in a physically demanding environment, then there's no real triggers because it's mental fatigue. Now, mental fatigue is generally gradual, and as we know, the body keeps adapting fast.
Yes.
So we don't realize what's happening until it's too late. As you know, many people work throughout an entire year, take a couple of days off for a Christmas or summer break, and they get sick because their body's protecting them. And then bingo, the body then punishes you for going, hey, yes, I like what you're doing now, but I'm going to punish you because you have not been looking after yourself. And so the mental fatigue is really hard. You have to be proactive with mental side of things and performance. You can't be reactive because it takes too long before you actually realize your brain is fatigued.
Yes. And you touched upon this thing about, remote working and during the pandemic. So it was quite tough for people, even if they were not mentally affected by their stress or their work. They had to, succumb to the pressures of the situation, the pressures of their lives. And many had financial issues, many had, familial issues. So in these circumstances, a person might not just want to go out and just go out and take care of themselves, right? Some people are, and many people are different. Many people are, they actually do not want to take care of themselves. They think that this is something that is happening and I will not be responsible for it, and I will just see it, see what is happening and face it, and maybe even accept it. Some people go as far as to just accept it without doing anything, and such people are at a risk of poor mental health, maybe even depression, anxiety, a lot of different mental disorders, right? So in such circumstances, many new wellness platforms have come up. So our platform is one, like Vantage Fit, right? So we allow employers or organizations to introduce wellness initiatives like maybe meditation, maybe walking. Like you said, walking is very simple, a simple but effective way of keeping oneself fit, both physically and mentally. So like a wellness platform like us, we do that. But the thing is that how does an employer or how does an employee constantly motivate their employees to be involved in such sports or wellness initiatives during such unwanted circumstances?
One of the big things that come out of COVID was a sense of belonging.
Yes.
And also a feeling of connectedness. So any sort of, in most cases, and this is not always the case because there are people like myself who absolutely love and are driven to go do exercise by myself. I don't need anyone, but there are a lot of people that need that space. That the only way that they can stay committed to it is if there's some sort of social connection.
Yes.
So how can you create spaces where people can buddy up and go do exercises together, whether that's online through Zoom or whether that's in a physical space? How can you create things like walking meetings? Like I always, anytime I get the phone, I pick it up and I walk around the house. So I walk outside the house and down the street.
Yeah.
One, so I can be focused, because otherwise I'll do something on the computer and not really be that present. But two, it just gets me active and I'm up and moving. But it's that social connection is huge, and creating some sort of way that people feel like they belong to something, some sort of social group where they can have a laugh and they can get away from life and do things together. It takes away that opportunity, because now if you're in a group situation and you're accountable to someone else, it takes away that opportunity where you can easily go, you know what, I won't do it today. But if someone else is doing it with you, you are more likely to, because you don't want to let them down. Or you don't want them to think, oh, I'm not pulling my weight, so to speak.
So it's more like a pride of the tribe sort of thing that also incites they inspires them to continue, because competition is one of the key motivators of human beings, right? So we do need that sense of belonging as well as the sense of competition in a sports. Like we do need that. There should be the prizes. It's not always friendly. It's not always friendly competition. There needs to be some sort of, incentive at the end. So that also keeps people, right? Yeah. Yeah,
in some cases. And look, I grew up in environments where it was all about competition. But, I go and play golf every weekend, and there are a group of us that are very competitive. The rest just turn up because they want to be there with their mates and have a good laugh. They really don't, they kind of care how they play, but they don't really care. Whereas the rest of us are out there to kind of win. I found it a little bit difficult for a while there to figure out why would people just want to go and do it without competing. But there is a huge amount of people that are just happy to just go along and do something. You'd see it in the gym, right? How many people get a personal trainer just to chat with?
Yes.
they want someone that actually cares about them, and someone to talk to, someone to
that can listen. Yeah.
They just want someone who's going to listen, and so they pay a personal trainer, and in most cases, yes, the personal trainer will help them do something physically and healthy, but in a lot of cases, it's just there to make them feel good, which I always find quite fascinating. But yeah, the competition can come into it, but I think it's only a select few. If you focus your corporate training, corporate wellness things on competition, you will exclude a lot of people. If you focus purely on just participation, you will also exclude people. So you have to find a blend of both and give people that opportunity to do what inspires them the most to want to exercise and be healthy.
Yes. Yes. So I would want, obviously, you have a long list of experiences so far in your life in terms of sports, right? Having taken part in so many different sports and competed in them internationally. So would you like to share a personal experience or maybe something that you have encountered over the years where you saw where a leader or someone, or maybe how sports played a crucial role in terms of leadership?
Yeah, look, most athletes go on to be very good leaders. Top athletes. In many cases, it's a bit of an adjustment because, yes, they're very driven and they're good at doing things, but a lot of it's still about themselves. So when they move into a corporate world, they can take a lot of things with them, but quite often they end up still being a bit too much about themselves, and they have to start thinking about other people. And I think the hardest thing, people coming from sort of high-end athletes, is moving into that corporate world, is people aren't as driven as what they are. Not everyone's driven. Not everyone's got a goal. Not everyone needs a goal. Some people just want to turn up and be a part of something rather than actually really driven to an outcome. So they kind of find that challenging. We've got a great case in Australia at the moment of Kieran Perkins, who is an incredible swimmer, one of the best swimmers of all time, internationally, won Olympic gold medals and many world championships and records. And he's just become the CEO of Australian Sports Commission, which is kind of looks after all of sport in Australia. And, I've really enjoyed watching the way he has taken stuff from sport, but also really thought about what is good leadership, what is relevant in the world right now, what do we need, and how can we include people and create that sense of belonging. So I found that really fascinating. I mean, obviously, we've seen the likes of Imran Khan, who went on to be, president of Pakistan, and some other great leaders. For me, I think, like, say, for myself in the leadership, that probably the biggest thing that I've been able to bring to a lot of people that they find fascinating is that I'm still a coach. Even though I'm the CEO, I coach teams, and I'm always looking at, okay, what is the best dynamic for a team to work really well together? How can I create really diverse teams and allow them to utilize their strengths to work together? And so that's what I love doing. And I think, for me, being able to take that out of sport, where even when I was coaching international athletes, it was all about winning medals. But you can take some of that stuff and put it into a space where you can give them the techniques to perform well, but there's no pressure to win a gold medal. There's no pressure from media. There's no pressure from sponsors. Yes, there might be, there's certain times where I need to create something that builds up a bit of pressure inside them so they can actually perform better. Yes. If the task is too easy and things like that. But most of the time, I'm able to work in those situations. Probably the biggest lesson, and this is something that I found really useful, and it comes from coaching, and that my intention, no matter who I'm interacting with, no matter whether it's coaching, whether it's an employee, whether it's just someone who I'm interacting with, is I look through the lens of what is holding them back. And I'm never looking at what can I give them, what can I get out of this? I'm always looking through the lens of what's holding them back and how can I unlock that? Because if I unlock that, then I've got a connection for life. Then I've got someone who really wants to lean in because now they've been freed up to be who themselves. And we do that with sport. Like, it's fascinating. The higher you go up, it's not about motivating or inspiring them anymore. It's actually about releasing the handbrake. The handbrake's on. It's about pushing the handbrake down so they can actually utilize their strengths and their gifts and their talents. And it's the same in the workplace. Quite often, people are being held back by limiting beliefs, by imposter syndrome, all these things, there's self-sabotage that goes on. So what is holding that person back from really utilizing their natural gifts and talents and the amazing things they can do?
That's amazing, Greg. And it has been really insightful, this entire session. So before we end our session, so would you like to give our listeners a few pointers as to what could help them?
Yeah, look, there's lots of things. I think anything in life, if it's so easy to say yes to everything until you have absolute clarity on your vision, like what is your purpose, what is your vision, you'll keep saying yes to everything. As soon as you get clarity, it's very easy to say no. You think about the Olympic athlete, but they set a goal of 2028, I'm going to win an Olympic gold medal. Now, they easily say no now to junk food, to late nights, to having alcohol, whatever it may be. All those things, all the distractions, it's easy to say no to. And it's the same in the workplace. It's the same if you want to become more healthy. If you set a goal and you are convicted on that outcome or that vision, then you'll start saying no really easy. If you're not convicted, if you don't find that, it's really, really hard. So if you want to lose weight, unless you have a specific goal in mind, it's actually really hard to lose weight.
Yes.
Or to stay committed to it long term. If you're wanting to get a promotion at work, same thing. If you want to improve your mental health, unless you have a specific goal around what you want to get to, it's quite hard to make that behavioral change and that shift to actually be able to achieve the outcome that the outcome you desire. Just saying, I want to lose weight is not going to help me really lose weight. But if I say, I want to lose 10 kgs by 25th of December, 2022, okay, now I've got a goal. Now I need to work back from that and create the steps along the way. And it's like anything in life. If you want to get a promotion and work, okay, well, that's what I want to get to. What are the steps I now need to get up to that? What are those little mini goals and to get there? So I think that's really important. I think a lot of the time too, we need to be kind to ourselves. And it's about how can you actually give yourself a bit of a break. Sometimes it's so harsh on ourselves, but the more stress we create, the less we're able to perform, the less we're able to, if weight loss is a thing, the harder it is to lose weight. It has a massive effect. So just being able to free your mind and let go of it and allow yourself to be who you are is really, really important. And probably based on the last thing is turn up as you, as authentically you, not who you think everyone else what you think everyone else thinks you should be.
Yes.
Just be who you are. And you'll be so much more effective and have such a more healthy, more happier life.
Thank you so much, Greg. It has been really insightful straight from the beginning. And I'm sure our listeners had a great time. And we look forward to bringing you back to another episode of the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast with some more questions, maybe on a different topic. And till then, thank you so much for being a part of our show once again, and have a great day.
Thanks, Alif. And to all the listeners out there, just enjoy life, have fun. But, there is a little bit of discipline required if you want to achieve those big dreams that you really desire.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.